Throughout the 6 years Fortnite has been out, there have been many players who were considered the best in the world at one point or another. But eventually, sooner than later, players tend to lose the passion they once had for the game. So today, let's take a look back on some of the best players to touch the game who no longer play in order to determine who really is the best pro to quit Fortnite. In order to do this properly, we're going to be mainly focusing on these players' competitive achievements from playing at big LAN events to winning FNCS. So one of the first players we have to take a look at would be the GOAT himself, tfue. Now you all know him, so he needs no introduction, but we're here to find out just one question. Is he the best player to quit Fortnite? At one point, he was arguably the best player in the world, but there's just one problem with that. There weren't really any major tournaments going on back then to really determine it. Don't get me wrong, there were a couple LANs like the Fall Skirmish and other ones like that he would do pretty damn well in. And eventually, when online tournaments came around, he continued to prove his dominance. When the World Cup came around, he would qualify in solos during the 3rd week by winning the whole thing. Unfortunately though, him and his long-term duo Cloaksy weren't able to pull off the qual in duos. But he was still one of the favorites going into the World Cup to win the whole thing. However, he didn't live up to those expectations, finishing in 67th. And after the World Cup, FNCSs were announced, which are really the main way of finding out who is the best. But tfue never actually ended up getting an impressive placement, with a 22nd in Season X trios, a 7th in squads, and a 16th in duos. And those were the only FNCSs he would play, and not too long after he would quit playing Fortnite. However, after the announcement of the new Zero Build game mode 2 years later, it brought him back and he started grinding it. And things came very easy to him. With his insane aim, he seemed unstoppable. But with there not really being any big Zero Build tournaments except for some of the third-party ones, it was hard for him to really prove how good he was. And with his last tournament being in April of 2023, who knows if he'll return, especially after recently retiring from content and gaming overall. But tfue has managed to earn himself over 700k from competitions, with his best placement being a win in the Fall Skirmish. For our next player, we need to talk about another OG that would be no other than the one and only benjyfishy. Everyone knows and loves him as being one of the most talented gamers we've seen. So what are his competitive achievements? Just like tfue, Benji has been playing from the very start of online tourneys, and he would pop off early on in his career. He would end up qualifying in the first week of the Solo World Cup, placing 3rd, and in the 2nd week duos, he would win it all with Mr. Savage. And again, going into the finals, they were some of the favorites to do well, but Benji would end up finishing 25th in solos and 14th in duos. Which isn't bad, but they had higher hopes. So after a disappointing finish in the World Cup, he would start to enter his prime. And for the first trio FNCS, he would create one of the most iconic trios with Mongraal and Mitro, creating MMB. Throughout the 5 weeks of the qualifiers, they managed to place 1st in 3 of them and 2nd in the other 2, which is something till this day we've never really seen. And with those impressive placements in the qualifiers, he would earn himself over 130 grand just from that. However, as you probably know, in the grand finals, they would sadly not do well, placing 10th. You can blame the mechs on that one. And going into the next season, which was squads, Benji would place 2nd, which would be his best placement in an FNCS ever, with his next closest being a 5th. And sadly, after Chapter 3 Season 2 FNCS Grand Finals, Benji would depart from Fortnite as he lost passion for the game. But he would end up finding a new one in Valorant. It seems to be going well for him since he recently joined a franchise team in Hedorix, becoming a pro Valorant player as well. But Benji has left a major mark on this game and other players, earning over 600 grand. Next up is one of the GOATs of the NA West region, and that would be Arcrum. He would start off his career playing in the World Cup and would be one of the few people to qualify for both solos and duos. In solos, he placed 53rd, but in duos, he would end up placing 5th, earning him 450 grand. Now, after an amazing performance in the World Cup, he would actually start to slip up a little bit in FNCSs after. Not placing too well in trios or squads, but he would bring it back in duos, getting a 3rd. And in that same season was the solo FNCS Invitationals, where he would finally prove he is one of the best players on the region by winning it and taking home 40 grand. And in Season 3, he wouldn't stop there, placing 2nd, just 2 points behind 1st. But going into Chapter 2 Season 4, the best trio on West would form with Epic Whale and Rex. They would go on to win 4 FNCSs in a row, and the one that would break their streak in Season 8, they ended up placing 2nd. But that same season during the Grand Royale, they pulled off the win once again. But going into Chapter 3, he would start to lose passion for the game. placing 15th in the first season but bringing it back with a 3rd in the season 2. Even though it was a good placement, this would still be the last FNCS he would play, quitting shortly after. And much like Benji, he would start playing Valorant and has goals to go pro one day. Another player we gotta mention has to be one of the calmest and smartest players to touch this game, and that would be Sam. Before becoming a pro Fortnite player, unlike many other players, he was actually a really good pro in the game Heroes of the Storm and Dota 2, which would definitely help him in his competitive Fortnite career. Throughout his years, he's had many major moments that are very iconic, like for example, destroying everybody by absolutely abusing the Infinity Blade. He hasn't made a name for himself by being the most mechanical or having the best aim. It's from being able to adapt quickly. During the World Cup, he was able to qualify in the first week by playing the meta, and in the finals, he would do the exact same thing. And because of this, he would finish in 2nd, earning himself over $1.8 million, making him the 3rd highest earned Fortnite player till this day. However, afterwards, his career would not see much success, with him making the trio and squads grands, but only placing 15th and 11th. And then in the middle of duo FNCS, he would end up quitting the game entirely. And like almost everyone else on this list, he would actually go on to play Valorant, and would play pro for a little bit. Now, he still plays the game, but isn't signed with any teams. And he said his goal one day is to become the most decorated competitor in gaming history, and so far he's doing a very good job at that. It would be disrespectful to not mention the godfather of competitive Fortnite on this list, and that would be Zayt. And for this one, we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone and throw in his duo Saf, since they pretty much have the same competitive achievements together. Since the beginning of the game, Saf and Zayt have been one of the best duos to play together. And early on, they would win multiple events like the Summer Skirmish and ESL Katowice. Because of this, like many others on our list, they were some of the favorites to win in the World Cup. Zayt would qual for solos, placing 2nd in week 5, and in the week before that, him and Saf would win in the duos week. In solos, Zayt would finish in 36th, which isn't bad since he's more known of a team game mode player. And going into duos, they were looking really good, but after a couple of unfortunate events, they slipped up and placed 4th. But that placement still earned Saf and Zayt 750k each, so they can't be too mad. After the World Cup, like you should know at this point, was FNCS, and in the first one, they would pick up Zayt and end up placing 4th. And going into the next season, which was squads, they would switch the team up again, playing with High Sky and Commandment, but again, they would place 4th. Luckily for them though, Season 2 was duos, and this time they would finally end up winning, getting their first FNCS title. But throughout the rest of his career, his best FNCS placement afterwards would only be a 4th. But after the solo FNCS All-Stars back in Chapter 2 Season 7, Zayt would quit playing Fortnite for good, so that leaves Saf. He would end up not playing in Season 8, but would go on to play the Grand Royale that same season. And after quitting, going into Chapter 3, he would actually return in the 2nd season to play with Fact City for fun, making it to the Heats, but unfortunately not to the Grands. And since then, he has also quit playing the game for good. And with Zayt being the 11th highest earned in Fortnite and Saf in 10th, they left a legacy behind on the game. Another player that has definitely left a legacy behind and was considered the best controller player in the world has to be wolfiez. Like everyone else here, he got his big break in the World Cup. Throughout the qualifiers, he would do decent but not good enough to qualify until the very last week of duos. Him and his duo Rojo would end up making it by winning the whole thing. And this actually made him one of only a few controller players at the World Cup. And not soon after, he would prove to everyone that he is the best controller player at the time, by placing 2nd overall, earning himself $1.1 million at the age of 15. And he would go on to have a very successful career afterwards, by placing 2nd in squads FNCS, and 2nd in the solo FNCS Invitationals. But as time went on, he would start to lose passion for the game. And with that, it would result in more inconsistent placements until he would eventually quit the game in May of 2023. But in that time, he's gone on to become the 7th most earned Fortnite player of all time, earning over 1.3 million. Before we get to the last player on this list, if you made it this far, might as well subscribe and like, cause we're getting closer to that goal of 10k subs. Without further ado, we have another GOAT of Fortnite and probably most of your guys' favorite player, and that would be Mongraal. Now everyone knows him from his viral clips, but we're here to see if he's the best. Now during the World Cup, he went absolutely crazy, easily qualifying for both duos and solos, and he was actually one of the only players, if not the only one, to do pretty good in both the finals, placing 13th in solos and 6th in duos, earning almost 400 grand. And then after, MMV would be born, and I've already covered it with Benji on how they managed to earn over 130 grand from just the qualifiers. Then they would go on to place 2nd in squads FNCS right after. But unlike Benji, Mongraal would go on to win an FNCS in Chapter 2 Season 4 with Micho and Tayson. But unfortunately, that win would be the last grand finals he would ever make. He would go on to play up until Chapter 3 Season 1, but with the decline in placements and like most players on this list who quit, he just lost the passion for the game. We did see a brief comeback for a few months later, but again he would leave. Even though he's quit Fortnite, he's came back recently with IRL videos and plans to do some travel vlogs in the future. So even though he's not back to gaming, it seems like the content is coming back for those who want it. Now I could go on forever and mention a bunch of players who could be on this list, but I don't want to make this video 10 hours long. So I'll leave it up to you guys. Comment down below who you guys think is the best pro Fortnite player to quit the game and why you think that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace out.